The moon hung heavy and low in the sky, its light dimmed by a veil of silver mist. In the heart of the fictional continent of Eliba, under the canopy of the ancient forest of Q, a village known as Oloru stood silent, save for the howling wind and the faint sobs that echoed from the medicine hut. Aja, the daughter of the moon keeper, bled silver every night. It was not a metaphor. Her blood shimmered like mercury, glowing under moonlight, and no healer, no spellcaster, and no ritual in the sacred codex could undo the mystery. Her condition began on her 12th cycle, the night she saw the pale woman in her dreams, the one who touched her heart and whispered, "You carry the key to the broken moon." From that day, her dreams became landscapes of ruin, of celestial beasts crying in chains, of stars that blinked like sorrowful eyes. And always, the moon would be there, watching. As she aged, the bleeding worsened, but it did not weaken her. Instead, her hair turned silver, her voice echoed unnaturally, and animals bowed their heads when she passed. The villagers feared her, even as her father, Toma the moonkeeper, tried to shield her from their superstition. On her 18th cycle, the sky cracked. A rift, like torn silk, opened above the moon. From it poured a silent rain of silver feathers and a humming noise, low and mournful. The village of Oloru awoke to the sound, and their eyes turned upward in terror. "The gate is failing," whispered Toma, kneeling before the falling light. Aja stood, barefoot and still bleeding silver, her eyes locked on the cracked sky. A stranger arrived that same night, barefoot, blindfolded, skin as dark as the void between stars. He carried no name, only a staff made of moonstone and a message, "The veil weeps for its daughter." Aja knew what she must do. To save the world, or perhaps to end it, she would walk through the crack in the sky. And she would bleed upon the stars. The path to the sky was not carved with steps but sung into existence. The stranger, whom the villagers began to call the star-blind one, sang an ancient melody that wrapped itself around air and gravity, lifting Aja toward the fracture above. As she rose, silver droplets fell from her skin, leaving a glittering trail that glowed even in the absence of light. The moon pulsed as she approached. Within the rift, Aja found herself not in a void but a corridor of light and memory. Walls flickered with echoes, her childhood laughter, her mother's lullabies, the first time she realized her blood was not like others. And above it all, a pulse. A heartbeat. Rhythmic and distant. "You are within the veil," said a voice that belonged to no one and everyone. The star-blind one remained outside. This was her journey alone. Aja walked until time lost meaning. She saw figures imprisoned in light, gods from forgotten stories, beasts with names etched in thunder. At the corridor's end stood a mirror, and in it, she saw not herself but the moon, whole and bright, then splintered and bleeding. "What are you?" she whispered. The mirror pulsed. Her silver blood began to pour more rapidly, soaking the mirrored floor. The moon's image wept. From her chest, a symbol burned, the same one etched on her dreams, on the feathers that rained from the cracked sky. It was the mark of the keeper. And the mirror responded. It shattered, not violently but as if finally exhaling. The pieces floated, transforming into 1,000 silver birds. They circled her, then flew up into the darkness, stitching the sky. Back in Oloru, the villagers saw the rift begin to close. The silver rain ceased. The humming faded. Aja descended slowly, no longer bleeding, her skin radiant like moonstone. "The veil is healed," the star-blind one said. "But the keeper has changed." Aja returned to her village, not as a cursed girl, but as a bridge between realms. She no longer dreamed of ruin. She dreamed of balance, of stars singing lullabies, of light that healed rather than burned. And every full moon, the sky shimmered with silver birds. They called her the Moondaughter, and from her story, new legends were born. The moon no longer bled, but Aja still listened. Every night since her return, she would climb the terrace of the Moonkeeper's watchtower, where the wind whispered secrets carried over from the far side of the veil. Her skin no longer glimmered with silver blood, yet something in her pulsed with otherworldly rhythm, a resonance with the sky she could neither name nor ignore. It had been 3 months since the rift closed. In that time, Oloro had transformed. The villagers who once feared her now approached with reverent awe. They brought gifts of woven moon silk, offered songs and seeds, and knelt before her with hands pressed to their hearts. She accepted none of it. Aja did not feel like a savior. She felt like a thread, stretched taut between two realities. Her dreams had changed, yes, but they had not ended. Now they came silent and radiant, filled with unfamiliar stars, and voices that spoke in tones of crystal and wind. They did not warn, they called. Beckoned. Her father, Toma, aged years in days after the rift closed. He no longer performed rituals beneath the moon, instead, he wandered the village paths in silence, speaking only to Aja when he could bear to meet her glowing eyes. Something about her unsettled him, even as pride softened his worn features. "I don't understand what you are now," he said one evening. She answered with a distant smile. "Neither do I." The star-blind one remained. He never removed his blindfold. He walked the edges of Oloro's forests, staff striking the ground in patterns only he seemed to understand. The villagers left him be, muttering that he was a watcher now, that he served the Moondaughter as guardian, or perhaps as warden. He spoke rarely, but when he did, his voice rippled the air. "Balance is not peace," he told Aja one twilight as they watched mist rise from the marshes. "It is a song that can fall out of tune." Aja had asked what he meant, but he only lifted his face toward the stars and sang a single note, a sound that vibrated deep in her bones. That night, she dreamed of the corridor of light again. But this time, it was cracked. The first omen arrived as a star that refused to rise. In the northwest sky, where the star Rihanna had always glittered brightest during the third moon of spring, there was only darkness. Astronomers across Eliba took note. In Oloro, the elders gathered beneath the central tree and burned incense in silence. "Stars do not disappear," one said. "They fall." Aja heard it too, the absence. Where Rihanna should have shone, there was now a hunger. A pulling. It was not long before the second omen followed. Children born in nearby villages during the night of the vanishing star were strange. Their eyes reflected no light. Their cries echoed as if from caverns far below the earth. One child in Ederin had silver veins visible through his skin. Another, born in Doma's hollow valley, spoke in full sentences before she had even opened her eyes. Some said these were miracles. Others, curses. Aja said nothing. She watched. By the fourth moon, silver birds began to fall from the sky. At first, only one or two, silent as snow, wings crumpled mid-flight. Their bodies shattered upon impact into dust that shimmered, then vanished. But soon there were dozens. Then hundreds. "They are memories," said the star-blind one. "Whose?" Aja asked. He tilted his head toward the sky. "Not ours." A summons arrived from beyond the forest of Q. The conclave of 6, ancient stewards of Eliba's celestial law, requested the Moondaughter's presence in the city of Marathon. Their message was bound in gold thread, sealed with the mark of the astral tribunal. Toma tried to dissuade her. "You gave enough," he said, hands trembling as he touched her arm. "Let others take this burden." But Aja knew it wasn't a burden. It was an answer. The mark on her chest, the symbol of the keeper, had begun to glow again. And it was warm. The journey to Marathon took 7 days by foot and sky raft. The star-blind one accompanied her, though he said nothing of why. He moved like mist between trees, his presence more sensed than seen. As they passed through the lands beyond Q, people lined the roads. They offered fruit and blessings, whispered prayers, and watched her with hope too heavy to carry. Children reached out to touch her glowing skin. Elders wept. She remained silent. The veil was healed, yes, but something else was stirring. She could feel it. Not breaking, but awakening. When they arrived in Marathon, the city sang. 1,000 bells rang as she passed through the crystal gate. The spires gleamed with starlight even at noon. At the Temple of Echoing Light, the conclave stood waiting. 6 robed figures. Faces hidden by moonglass masks. Voices layered and soft. You walk between breath and silence, one said. You are the key. We have seen the songs unravel, said another. The sky holds more than stars. Will you listen? Asked the third. Aegis stepped forward. I already am. In the weeks that followed, Aegis studied the ancient maps of the sky, not the ones drawn by starlight, but those etched into the bones of the world. The conclave had records predating the fall of the first moon, stories of the before sky, when celestial beasts roamed freely and the veil was not a boundary, but a breach. Do you know why the veil broke? One conclave member asked. I thought I was the reason. No. You were the warning. It was in those halls of moonstone and shadow that Aegis learned of the Riven Star, a celestial force imprisoned beyond the veil, bound by the first moonkeeper to preserve balance. Its name had been struck from language, its essence confined to dream. It had stirred when Aegis bled silver. It had awakened when the rift cracked. And now, it was watching. On the 12th night of her stay, Aegis stood alone in the celestial archive. She ran her fingers over an obsidian tablet, its surface etched with constellations that pulsed faintly under her touch. Behind her, the star-blind one approached. It's not finished, he said. She turned. What isn't? This story. He stepped forward, removed his blindfold. His eyes were galaxies. Twin spirals of stars spinning endlessly. You must walk again, he said. But not through the sky. Aegis felt it then, a pull beneath the earth. A heartbeat, like the one in the veil corridor, but deeper. More ancient. Where? She whispered. He smiled. To the place where the moon was born. They returned secure under starlight. The trees had begun to hum. The villagers said the forest itself was changing, branches grown into strange shapes, leaves glowing faintly, roots that seemed to pulse when stepped upon. At the center of it all, the tree that marked the heart of Oloru had split down the middle, revealing a spiral staircase carved in silver. No one knew where it led. Aegis did. It led downward. She descended alone. The star-blind one remained at the entrance, chanting softly, weaving a spell of warding that shimmered against the stairwell like breath on glass. Aegis' journey down was silent but not still. She passed through chambers carved in stone and light. She saw murals of the first moonkeeper, a woman of flame and shadow who bore the mark across her spine. She saw the Riven Star, not as a monster, but as a child made of collapsed time, weeping for a name it could not remember. And she saw herself, not once, but many times. A thread through history. A recurrence. Always bleeding silver. Always walking into the dark. At the final chamber, the stone pulsed with a low, steady sound. At its center, a pool of silver, glowing softly. Suspended above it, a shard of moonlight, spinning slowly. Aegis stepped forward. The shard whispered, "You are not the end." She reached out, and the silver rose to meet her. Above, in Oloru, the stars blinked in unison. The sky did not break. It opened. From it, not feathers, but light. And from the forest floor, a new tree began to rise, its bark glimmering with moonstone, its leaves silver flame. The villagers gathered, breathless. The star-blind one stood tall, arms raised. "She is walking the route of the moon," he said. "And she will not walk back alone." The silver pool did not ripple when Aegis stepped into it. It parted for her like breath dispersing in cold air, welcoming, familiar. The shard of moonlight above her began to pulse faster, as if responding to her nearness. And the moment her fingers brushed its surface, a storm of sensation bloomed inside her. Memories that were not hers. A field of moons where children played with ribbons of light. A city carved into the rings of a dead planet. A woman who bore the mark of the keeper across both palms, screaming as she closed the first gate with her own life. And something darker. A sound, not loud, but absolute. A silence so complete that it unmade everything it touched. Aegis dropped to her knees, gasping. The shard hovered closer. "You see it now," said the voice that belonged to none and all. "The riven star was not caged to protect you. You were created to protect it." Above ground, the star-blind one flinched. The great silver tree had grown another meter in minutes. The villagers stood around it, some praying, some crying, others retreating in fear. Its leaves sang, a low, harmonic tone that echoed across the valley. And then the earth shuddered. From the mountains beyond the forest, a tremor spread like breath held too long. Flocks of birds burst into the air. The mist thickened, swirling unnaturally, forming symbols in the sky. Something ancient had stirred. And it was watching back. In the root chamber, Aegis stood again, steady. The shard before her had changed. No longer just light, it now held form. An eye, silver and endless, staring into her soul. "You were made in our image," the voice said again, this time from behind her. Aegis turned. A figure stood in the shadows. Not the star-blind one, not anything she had seen before. It was robed in void, a garment made of absence. Where its face should have been, there was only a mirror. She saw herself in it, fractured. A girl. A god. A storm. A star. "Your people call it the riven star," the figure said, voice vibrating the stone. "But it is a wound. A consciousness born before the moons. It cannot be caged. It can only be understood." Aegis narrowed her glowing eyes. "Then why was it imprisoned?" "Because mortals feared what it would reveal, that they are not the center of creation, but its echo." The pool of silver below began to swirl, rising toward the ceiling. Images flickered within it, Oloru burning. The star-blind one kneeling before a blade of starlight. Toma, her father, walking into the forest alone, tears falling silently. A warning. Or a promise. "You are the veil's daughter," the being said, stepping forward. "But the veil is not merely a barrier. It is a skin. And something is trying to tear through." "What is it?" she asked. The mirror face tilted. "A hunger." Back in Oloru, Toma stood alone at the shrine where Aegis had first bled silver. The feathers from the sky had long since vanished, but he still remembered the sound they made, like dying dreams. He lit a small flame. Whispered the old lullaby Aegis' mother used to sing. Above him, the tree groaned. Its bark split, not cracking, but unfolding. Inside it, a hollow. Inside the hollow, a heart. Not beating. Growing. Aegis followed the mirror beam deeper into the sanctum. They passed through corridors of memory, light, and root. Each chamber showed her a different version of herself, alive in other times, wearing the same mark. In some, she was a warrior. In others, a priestess. In one, a child floating among stars, her tears forming new constellations. "This has all happened before," she said, voice trembling. "Hasn't it?" The figure did not answer. Instead, it gestured toward a final door, one made not of stone, but of sound. A musical threshold. Aegis stepped through. She was no longer underground. She stood on a plateau of stardust, under a sky with two moons, one whole, one fractured and bleeding silver fire. The stars were not stars. They were eyes. And at the center of the sky, suspended like a question yet unanswered, was a being made entirely of torn light. It wept. Each tear that fell became a planet, spinning briefly before vanishing. Aegis stepped forward. It looked at her. And spoke without speaking. "Do you remember me?" She did. Not in words, but in ache. In the pool that had lived in her bones since her first dream. In the rhythm that had throbbed under her skin every time the moon rose full. "You're the first light," she whispered. "The one that broke itself to make room for everything else." It pulsed in agreement. "I'm your daughter. Not born. Shaped." The revelation shattered her. Not into despair, but clarity. The veil was never meant to keep danger out. It was meant to protect the world from the grief of the first light. A grief so powerful it could birth or unmake stars. Aegis was a vessel, not to contain it, but to carry it with compassion. She wept. Silver tears fell from her cheeks onto the stardust ground, and where they landed, flowers bloomed, petals of moonlight and sorrow. The first light leaned closer. "You have made the choice." The world below changed. In Oloru, the great tree's heart began to beat. From its trunk came music. Not song, but memory. The villagers dropped to their knees. The sky opened again, but this time, no feathers fell. Children of light stepped forth. Eyes like stars. Voices like flutes. Hands woven of dusk. The star-blind one fell to one knee. She has awakened them. Aegis returned in light. Not walking. Not descending. Becoming. She stood at the heart of the silver tree, no longer glowing, but radiating calm. The mark of the keeper was now across her forehead, chest, and palms. She raised her arms. And the world exhaled. The silver tree at the heart of Oloru stood taller than any spire, its branches stretching into clouds that now shimmered with sentient light. The world felt quieter. Not still, but listening. Aegis, the Moondaughter, walked among her people once more. She no longer cast shadows. The children of light had taken no names. They did not speak in words but in harmonics, pure frequencies that hummed directly into the mind. Some resembled winged beings, others were like rivers in motion, barely contained in human shape. All bore the same sigil across their luminous skin, a moon pierced by a thread of silver. The same sigil now rested in the sky, where the gate once tore the firmament. It pulsed slowly. A wound turned into a scar. A memory made peace. Toma knelt before his daughter, tears catching in his beard. "I feared you'd leave us forever." "I did," Aegis said. "But what I was, died to become what I am." Her voice carried echoes, each word layered with something older than time. She touched her father's forehead, and he gasped, not in pain, but in remembrance. He saw her birth not as he'd known it, but from another realm, a fragment of moonlight falling like a petal through the veil, swaddled in silence, kissed by the first light. "You were never just my daughter," he whispered. "But I was always yours," she said, and kissed his brow. The children of light sang again. Their melody told the truth no myth had ever dared. That the gods were not creators, but curators of sorrow. That stars were not born, they were forged from moments of healing. And that Aegis had done what no keeper before her could. She had not sealed the riven star. She had forgiven it. The star-blind one approached her beneath the silver canopy. He lowered his staff, and for the first time, removed his blindfold. His eyes were two black holes, endless, silent, kind. "You've changed everything," he said. "And yet, you are still gentle." Aja nodded. The first light did not weep because it was broken. It wept because it remembered what it had to give up to let creation begin. But not all was at peace. Beyond the veil of their reality, the unmade ones stirred, beings who had once served as guardians of the void, now twisted by hunger for form, for purpose, for light. They had felt the closing of the gate. And they resented it. One last ripple of darkness loomed at the edge of stars, a tremor before final silence. Aja saw it. And she chose. That night, beneath a full, unbroken moon, she gathered her people one last time. "I will go beyond," she said, "not to fight, but to carry the memory of peace into the place that forgot what light feels like." The villagers wept. The silver birds circled overhead, their wings catching stardust. Toma held her hand. "Will you return?" Aja smiled gently. "Not as you know me. But always, when the moon is high, and the wind sings in silver, you will feel me near." The children of light opened the last path. Not a gate. Not a rift. A bridge of song. And Aja, the Moondaughter, walked it barefoot, silver tears in her wake, arms open, eyes calm. She entered the dark not to banish it, but to hold it until it remembered how to shine. In time, a new generation of keepers arose. Not priests. Not warriors. Not gods. But dreamers. And on every full moon, when children looked up and saw silver birds flying through starlight, they would whisper the old tale. She bled upon the stars, and they learned to sing.